Hello everyone, we're back. In today's video, we're back with another trade tree video. Today we're doing the Milan Lucic trade tree video. This deal happened a long time ago, nearly a decade. And a decade afterwards, it's still helping the Boston Bruins. We'll touch on this trade tree coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we get into this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. And don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming out in the very near future. So in today's video, we're doing a very interesting trade tree. We've done a handful of these over the past while. We're going back all the way to June 26, 2015. So in a very interesting trade on June 26, we saw the Boston Bruins and Los Angeles Kings both trying to make some very interesting things happen, hook up on a trade. Now this was involving pending UFA entering the final year of his deal, Milan Lucic. Lucic would help the Boston Bruins about, I think it was 4 years prior, would lift the Stanley Cup in the Boston Bruins organization, went to the Los Angeles Kings. Now the Kings had just been eliminated from the playoffs. They were a year removed from winning the Cup over the New York Rangers back in 2014. So they were looking to try and keep this team competitive and help this team continue to make some strides to be a consistent contender for the Cup. So they were going to make a move with the Boston Bruins to acquire Milan Lucic in the final year of his contract. The full trade was as follows. June 26, 2015, the Boston Bruins acquired Colin Miller, a 2015 first-round pick, which was 13th overall, and Martin Jones from the Los Angeles Kings for Milan Lucic. So that's the basis of this trade tree. The Kings added a top 6, top 9 forward who was hard to play against, who could help them keep competitive in the playoffs in the Western Conference, while the Bruins got a first-round pick, a young defenseman, and as well as a really solid goaltending prospect. So we'll start this side from the LA Kings because it's not too long. So Lucic in the previous years with the Boston Bruins, 4 of the 5 previous years besides the shortened season 2012-2013, he had put up at least 40 points. So the Kings knew what they were getting. He had another solid season. In that season that he was acquired by Los Angeles Kings, he had 20 goals, 55 points, which is his highest in both categories in 2 years, in 81 games. Also had 3 assists in 5 playoff games, where the Kings were ousted early once again in the postseason. And then with Lucic's contract expiring, the Kings would actually walk away from him. That is when Edmonton would sign to a long-term extension, which never really worked out for the Edmonton Oilers. But still, it was a very interesting 1 year for the Los Angeles Kings with Milan Lucic before he walked as UFA. And because he walked away as a UFA, that branch of the trade tree ends. So not really much from Los Angeles didn't help him get to a cup, didn't help him do overly good in the postseason, didn't extend him or anything. It's just 1 year of Milan Lucic, made the playoffs, first round exited, and then he walks away as a UFA. So very interesting note there. Now 3 pieces the Boston Bruins got were all very interesting. We'll start with the smaller one of the 3, and that was young defenseman Colin Miller. Now Colin Miller was a young prospect at the time, hadn't gone to any NHL action. So that following season after the trade, he got into his first career NHL action with the Boston Bruins, putting up 3 goals and 16 points in 42 games. Looked like he would have a solid career in the Boston Bruins organization. Following season, he put up a career high 6 goals as well as 13 points in 61 games with the Boston Bruins after signing a 2-year extension. But the following offseason, he was exposed in the expansion draft by the Boston Bruins and actually wound up being the Vegas Golden Knights selection from the Boston Bruins in the expansion draft. So because of that, the Bruins lost him in the expansion draft, and thus that branch of the trade tree ends because he went to Vegas, where he wound up putting up some of his best numbers of his entire career. So very interesting note there, but Colin Miller's time in Boston was very short, only 2 years after being traded from LA to Boston, and then he left in the expansion draft. So very interesting note there. And he had the 13th overall pick in the 2015 draft. So that was a very interesting pick. It was one of the worst drafts in Boston Bruins history because we know what the Boston Bruins did. They picked a couple of guys who turned out to be all right, but they passed up on guys like Shabbat, Kyle Connor. There was a couple of other guys in that 2015 draft who went right after the Boston Bruins, and the Boston Bruins had 3 first-round picks in that 2015 draft. So that was one of the Boston Bruins' worst drafts in recent memory. And on top of that, 2015 13th overall pick was because of the Milan Lucic deal. So one of those 3 first-round picks were because of that deal. So it was the 13th overall pick in the 2015 draft. The Boston Bruins selected Jacob Zboril. Now, Zboril will take a couple of years to get to the NHL level. His first taste of NHL action will be in the 18-19 season, putting up no points in 2 games. He'd been majority of an AHL level player up until that point. He spent a couple of seasons overseas, over in juniors, then he spent a couple of seasons at the AHL level. In the 2020-2021 season, which was the shortened season, he got into a couple of games over in Czechia, putting up a goal and 8 points in 18 games. Also had 9 assists in 42 games with the Boston Bruins. Started to really take off his career at that point. points. Then 21-22 didn't do overly much at the NHL level, putting up 3 assists in 10 games. Then in 22-23 season, he got into a goal and 4 points in 22 games with the Boston Bruins. Also played a couple of games back over in Czechia. Then in 23-24 season, he would start at the AHL level, put up 9 assists in 31 games. And even though he was getting over $1 million on his cap hit, he still wasn't cracking the NHL roster for the Boston Bruins. So at that point, the Boston Bruins would decide to make a trade with the Columbus Blue Jackets. So come the trade deadline in March 2024, we saw the Columbus Blue Jackets and Boston Bruins hook up on a deal regarding Jacob Zboril, and the trade was as follows. Zboril went to the Columbus Blue Jackets along with the Boston Bruins 2027 third round pick, and in exchange, the Columbus Blue Jackets traded the Boston Bruins Andrew Peeke. Now, Peeke had been a fringe NHL defenseman in the Columbus Blue Jackets organization. The year prior to the trade, he had put up 6 goals, which was a career high, and 13 points in 80 games for the Columbus Blue Jackets. At the time of this trade, Peeke had only gone into 23 games with the Columbus Blue Jackets at the NHL level, putting up a goal and 8 points. After the trade, he wound up having 15 games played with the Boston Bruins, putting up 2 assists. Didn't look overly bad, and also got into 6 games of NHL action in the postseason for Boston, putting up no points. Last year, he was able to play a full season at the NHL level, was a really consistent NHL defenseman for the Boston Bruins. In 76 games, he put up 1 goal and 17 points. So that 17 points was a career high for him. He had a pretty solid season, playing basically on the third pair for the Boston Bruins the entirety of the season. So very interesting note there. And he's still under contract at this current point in time with the Boston Bruins. He's currently got 1 more year left at $2.75 million AAV. So the Bruins still have Andrew Peeke because of this trade tree. So very interesting note there. And then the last piece of this trade tree is a pretty big one. That was Martin Jones. Now, Jones, who was an RFA at the current point of the trade, wound up getting dealt to the Boston Bruins. But Martin Jones' time in the Boston Bruins organization would actually be cut short. He didn't have very much time because 4 days after the original Lucic trade, the Boston Bruins would flip Martin Jones. The full trade was as follows. They would flip Martin Jones, who was still an RFA at the time, to the San Jose Sharks for Sean Kuraly and a 2016 first-round pick. So Kuraly, at the time of this trade, had not played at all at the NHL level, and the upcoming season, he still played in the minors. The following season, he got into his first taste of NHL action with the Boston Bruins, putting up an assist in 8 games. Then the 17-18 season, he had his first full season at the NHL level, putting up 6 goals and 14 points in 75 games. In the 18-19 season, he had a solid season, putting up 8 goals and 21 points in 71 games. Following season had 23 points in 69 games. Then he had the shortened season where he only had 4 goals and 9 points in 47 games, but his contract came to an end in the 2021 offseason, and the Boston Bruins would wind up walking away from him. So very interesting note there. Like, Kuraly did help the Boston Bruins in the 18-19 season reach the Stanley Cup final against the St. Louis Blues, and the Boston Bruins got a couple of really solid seasons out of Sean Kuraly, 4 full seasons. But once again, he walked away as a UFA and wound up signing Columbus. Now Kuraly is actually back in Boston as of recording this video. He just signed a 2-year extension to be back in Boston after his contract in Columbus came to an end. So we'll see how he does back in Boston, his return to Boston. But because he left as a UFA, that first stint in 2021, that branch of the trade tree ends. And the last piece that the Boston Bruins got was the 2016 first-round pick. Now, that year, the San Jose Sharks would actually wind up losing to the Pittsburgh Penguins in the Stanley Cup final, so that was a very low first-round pick, and wound up being the 29th overall pick in the 2016 draft. And with the 29th overall pick in the 2016 draft, which Boston kept, they would wind up taking Trent Frederic. Now, just like some of these other guys, with guys like Kuraly and Zboril, it took a little bit of time for Frederic to really get established at the NHL level. His first few games of NHL action were in the 18-19 season, where he had no points in 15 games. Then he had no points in 2 games in the 19-20 season. Then the shortened season, he wound up playing his first full season at the NHL level, putting up 4 goals and 5 points in 42 games, his first few points at the NHL level. The 21-22 season was a pretty decent season for Trent Frederic after signing his 2-year extension, put up 8 goals and 18 points in 60 games, but the 22-23 season, he popped off. He had a fantastic season in the 22-23 season, putting up 17 goals and 31 points in 79 games, and would even increase on that in the 23-24 season, putting up 18 goals and 40 points in 82 games for the Boston Bruins. So he looked phenomenal for the Boston Bruins. Then last year, though, his contract was coming to an end. He was about to become a pending UFA. The Bruins weren't doing overly good, as they were, for the first time in a while, a non-playoff team. He wound up having 8 goals and 15 points in 57 games with the Boston Bruins. But with time running out in his contract and Boston still being a bad team, they would wind up trading him at the 2025 trade deadline. The full trade was as follows. The Edmonton Oilers would acquire Max Jones and Trent Frederic from the Boston Bruins in exchange for Max Warner, a 2025 second-round pick, and a 2026 4th round pick. So very interesting to note that there's some 3 very interesting pieces that the Boston Bruins got in this trade tree. So look at the player first. Max Warner, who is currently in the final year of his ELC. He's the right shot defenseman. He's 22 years old. He was a 7th round pick back in the 2021 draft of the Edmonton Oilers. So very interesting to note there. Warner has had very little experience at the NHL level, actually none. A couple of years ago had some pretty solid seasons over in the WHL. 2 years ago got his first taste of AHL action, putting up 7 goals and 17 points in 68 games. And then last year he split time between Providence and Bakersfield because he was traded. He wound up getting to 37 AHL games, putting up a goal and 5 points. So it wasn't an overly productive player. I think eventually Warner could challenge for like maybe a 6-7 role in the Boston Bruins organization, but I don't think it'll be a guaranteed role. So just a young prospect the Boston Bruins could eventually have in their lineup. So very interesting note there. They also got 2025 2nd round pick. Now this was originally the St. Louis Blues, the pick that the Edmonton Oilers got in the Dylan Holloway, Philip Broberg offer sheets, and it wound up being 51st overall. And the Boston Bruins, because they were a bad team last year, would keep that pick. So with that 51st overall pick in the 2025 draft, the Boston Bruins selected center prospect William Moore. Now Moore is 18 years old at this point in time. He's not an overly productive NHL player because he was just drafted this past year. He wound up playing in 64 National Team Development Program games, putting up 27 goals and 59 points. Looked pretty good. He's playing over in the NCAA this past year. Already has an assist in his first NCAA game for this upcoming season. So Moore, I think, eventually could be a solid 2nd, 3rd line center for the Boston Bruins. And wasn't a bad pickup there for the Boston Bruins, even though Moore's not going to be anything at the NHL level for a couple of years. Really solid pickup there. And then the 2026 4th round pick wouldn't stay with the Boston Bruins. So after acquiring Edmonton's 4th round pick in the 2026 draft as part of the Trent Frederick deal, they would immediately flip it just a couple of days later at the end of the trade deadline to the Buffalo Sabres in a trade that landed them Henry Jokiharju. So it was the 4th round pick for Jokiharju. Jokiharju was a penny UFA, so they wanted to just try and add some more defensive help on the defensive end for the rest of the season. He had put up 3 goals and 6 points in 14 games with Buffalo before the trade, had 4 assists in 18 games after being acquired by Boston, had 10 points in 60 games. Wasn't one of his better point totals at the NHL level for Jokiharju, but instead of letting him walk as UFA, the Boston Bruins wound up keeping him. Even though he was a UFA, the Boston Bruins signed him to a 3-year extension this past offseason with an AAV of $3 million that's going to keep him in Boston for the next couple of seasons. So very interesting note there. But that 4th round pick, they wound up helping the Boston Bruins at one of their top 4 defensemen at this current point in time in Henry Jokiharju. So very interesting note there. So it's a very interesting trade tree. If you break it all down, the LA Kings got 1 year of Milan Lucic before he walked away as UFA, which is a very interesting note there. The Boston Bruins would wind up getting a couple of years of Colin Miller before he left in the expansion draft. We'll get a handful of seasons out of Jacobs of the world before they traded him with a 3rd round pick to acquire Andrew Peeke, who's still on their team. They would wind up getting 4 days worth of Martin Jones before they flipped him to the San Jose Sharks. Got Corrali in a 1st rounder. Corrali had some really good seasons in Boston, helped them get to the 2019 Stanley Cup final before he left as UFA. The 1st round pick turned to Trent Frederick, who had a couple of really good seasons in Boston, would eventually get traded for Warner, a 2nd round pick, and a 4th round pick. They would use the 2nd round pick. Warner's still in the club. They would trade the 4th round pick for Jokiharju, and Jokiharju's still in the club. So all in all, if you break it all down, the Kings have nothing to show for this trade tree at this current point in time. Well, the Boston Bruins have Jokiharju, Warner, Moore, and Peeke. So the Bruins still have 4 pieces because of this deal. So I think at this point in time, you could say the Boston Bruins won this trade tree. Maybe you could say the first few years LA won that trade tree, but I think looking back at it, I think it's like, what, 9-10 years ago now? I think the Boston Bruins definitely won this trade tree. So definitely have to hear your thoughts. Who do you think won this trade tree? And are you surprised that the Boston Bruins are still benefiting from the Lucic trade tree 9 to 10 years after this trade tree was finished? Definitely have your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video, and if you'd like to subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this with all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming out in the very near future. Also a blog to make news, rumors, analysis. If that's from, check that out. I'll link that in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.